Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, my name is Mark Smith. I'm the chairperson for the Mayor's Commission for Citizens with Disabilities for the City of Omaha. I want to welcome our television audience, any other guests, members, and our interpreter, Jamie. I do want to remind you that these are broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and are also, to the best of my knowledge, being broadcast on Channel 22 Cox. This can also be viewed on the mayor's website. The Disability Commission website is www.cityofomaha.org. Click on Mayor's Office and then click on Disabilities Commission. Just as a reminder, we usually have some quick report outs, and then we have a presenter, but a little bit about the commission. Our main objective is to promote the quality of life, the accessibility to the community, and equity in all aspects related to the city on behalf of and in cooperation with our citizens who experience disabilities. To this end, the commission advises the mayor, the city council, city department heads, and other personnel on issues of access, representation, employment, housing, and quality of life affecting citizens with disabilities and their families. We also serve as a resource for Omaha citizens with disabilities and their families who have concerns and assist in resolving those concerns as we are able to, as to what affects them. We work to publicize the role of the Mayor's Commission and the resources available to assist people with disabilities, employers, housing representatives, business owners, engineers, architects, and others who have a role in promoting and bettering the lives of Omaha citizens generally. We work to promote awareness to the general public on the capabilities, needs, and desires of persons with disabilities. We publicly recognize the efforts, as we are able to, of employers, businesses, schools, organizations, and others who have demonstrated outstanding supportive programs and services for individuals with disabilities. We serve to advocate for accessibility and implement plans and projects to promote and improve services for citizens with disabilities. That's hard to say. And we also look at plans and projects and advocate through systems improvements as we're able to. We occasionally will hit a city council meeting. It just depends on if there are pertinent issues in play. With that, that's a little bit about us. What I'd like to do now is take a moment and have the members introduce themselves, and then we'll go to some report outs from a couple of our members. So is it easier if I pick folks, or how do you guys prefer? Okay, Lora?
Lora Young with the League of Human Dignity here in Omaha.
Thanks, Lora. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jen Pollock. I work in special education for Millard Public Schools.
Thank you, Jen. Lisa?
Yes, I am Reverend Dr. Lisa Sherman. I am with Faith Christian Church, and I'm the Executive Director of Grace Drippings of Grace Ministries.
Excellent, thank you. Steph?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Scavdal. I work for Outlook, Nebraska. We employ individuals who are blind and visually impaired and provide enrichment activities.
Meaghan?
I'm Meaghan Walls. My company is Assistology, and we advocate but also provide training and consultation around accessibility and inclusion for all members of our community.
Okay, I'm gonna introduce on behalf of Eric Olson is one of our members at large. He doesn't have a camera or microphone on his computer, so he's with us, but he's unable to report out. So Eric Olson is also one of our members. I think that I don't think I missed. Oh, Nancy, there you are.
Okay, I'm Nancy Florell, and I'm with the Nebraska Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. We're the vocational rehabilitation agency that serves visually impaired, blind, and deafblind.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mhm.
It's like Hollywood Squares up here, trying to get to
I
everybody.
get it.
And again, I'm Mark Smith. I'm an assistant professor at the University Center on Disabilities at the Monroe Meyer Institute at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and am here to represent individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. I'm also a parent and a sibling to adults with intellectual and intellectual disabilities. We also have a couple of visitors. If you wanted to introduce yourself, or you don't have to. Either way is fine.
I am Melanie Davis, and I'm a trainee under Mark Smith at the Monroe Meyer Institute, and I'm also a person with a disability.
Thanks, Mel.
And I'm Emily Costello. I'm also a trainee with Mark Smith at MMI, and I'm a sibling to an individual with a disability.
And I promise I don't require them to attend these. They do so of their own accord. Let's see. Okay. A couple, we're virtual, so we don't have an agenda or minutes to approve. We did want to, we've had a couple of our members doing some work on specifically COVID, and then also some access issues. Maybe a brief report out from Meaghan and Lora. Whoever wants to go first.
Sure, I can go. So I've just been following some research and work that's been conducted by Mode Shift on accessibility and studies in the city. And they recently released a report that detailed out the corridor from 10th Street to Westroads Mall, where the Orbit bus has replaced the Route 2 bus, and looking at accessibility issues from infrastructure to blocked sidewalks and barriers due to distance to be traveled between locations and whatnot. So the report should be available through ModeShift. And if you have questions or wanted some more information, their general email address is info@modeshiftomaha.org.
Thanks, Meaghan. Lora?
I've been working with the task force for COVID vaccines. A brief, quick update. Right now, Douglas County is working on individuals that are 60 and older, so they were born in 1961 and up, and they're looking at taking some people with some significant health concerns. So make sure you go on, you either call them or go onto the website to get signed up. Even if you're under 60, do that, because they will let you know when you come up to be vaccinated. They are also working with Charles Drew out of North Omaha. The other biggest thing that I think it's important for people to know, if you're unable, due to your health, to get out of your house and go to a location for the shot, please call the health department at 402-440-3400. Tell them that, get on the list, and when they have the volunteers to go out and do it, they will come to your home and vaccinate you in your home. They've already done some. They have a list they're working on with others. You need to be a little patient, but they will come out and do that for you.
Can you repeat that
Otherwise,
phone number one more time, Lora?
you bet. 402-440-3400. And the website is douglascountyhealth.com.
Okay, thanks, Laura. And appreciations to Laura and Meaghan for their work and kind of getting out there and representing the commission in some key areas of work. So greatly appreciated. Let's see. So Now I want to turn to our presenter for today, Todd Pfitzer, who's a city engineer with the City of Omaha Public Works Department, is here to talk to us a little bit and to take some questions. Thank you, Meaghan. To take some questions and regarding accessibility and issues around things like curb cut, sidewalks, construction, etc. And so if I can turn it over to you, Todd, that would be great.
Sure. Can you, first of all, can everybody hear me okay? I obviously, all right, good deal.
Yes.
Let me just give a little bit of background. Sometimes the terminology that we engineers use can be different than the terminology that the general public uses. So when Gerald today sent me out something, he asked me to talk about curb cuts. Curb cuts generally in my world are driveway cuts, where somebody comes in and they want to build a new C-store or something and they want a cut in the curb. So I want to clarify, first of all, when you say curb cuts, could you tell me specifically what are you talking about ADA ramps at intersections?
We are. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I just want to be very clear on that before
Absolutely.
we get started. So let me start by giving a bit of a background into where we are with federal requirements and things like that from a city standpoint. When they passed the American Disabilities Act, which was back in the early 90s, I believe, or late 80s, early 90s, we, with every other first-class city, were required to start addressing that issue. I don't know the exact year. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 years ago. We had someone call in federally, call the federal department and say, hey, I've got this route in Omaha. It's not handicapped accessible. You guys need to look into what Omaha is doing. So they came to town. This is before I was at the city, so I'm giving you some history here. Was not part of what I did, but essentially the city at that time was mandated through a federal mandate to start implementing at a given pace ADA requirements throughout the city. Obviously, there were some things that were already done, but at that point, it was the first year, I believe, was $1.3 million. Since then, so for the last 20 or so years, we have implemented at least $1.5 million, sometimes up to 3 or 4 million, depending on available funding, grants, projects, different things like that, every year throughout the city of Omaha. About 7 years ago, the Federal Highway Department came to town with the state DOT, and they were tentative and almost nervous. And they said, you're the biggest city in Omaha. We kind of waited till last. We've learned from working with some of the others. We need to sit down and iron out and map out a compliance schedule with you guys. And so we showed them what we'd been doing, and the tension kind of left the room. They said, we had no idea you guys had been putting forth this much effort for this long. We're so relieved. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's all we can ask of you. And so we've continued kind of down that path. So in a nutshell, that's how, a Class A city like this slowly chips away at becoming compliant. We've got 5,000 lane miles of streets in Omaha. I couldn't give you the amount of lane miles we have in sidewalks. I don't have that number, but obviously when you have something that is that that size, it takes time to do. And so we just continue to chip away at it. Some of the ways they get done, Gerald sent me a few questions to kind of prepare for. One of the ways that you'll see this happening is anytime we do an upgrade to a street, whether it's a mill and resurface of a black asphalt street, or we come in and do a significant panel replacement effort, anytime that is federally funded in any way, shape, or form, we by law have to upgrade that street to ADA standards. So what you'll normally see, it doesn't always work in this order, but normally we try to get the contractors out ahead of time to do all of the ADA work, because they have to tie in those ramps, the curb cuts, all of that stuff that ties into the panels, and then they'll come back and do the panels. Last year, when the bond issue passed, we had some really nice fall weather. If you remember right, we had some money coming in. We had been prepared for this bond issue to hopefully pass, which it did. And we had contractors calling us late in the season saying, hey, we're done with everything that you gave us for this year's contract. We have some more capacity. Do you want us to keep working? And we said, yes, we do. So in some cases last fall, and I know Ames Avenue was one of those examples, we had our paving contractor get out ahead of our sidewalk contractor. And now that'll be rectified and fixed or addressed yet this season with this coming construction season. But in general, we get out there ahead of time and get the ramps done first, and then come back and do the mill and overlays or the panels. We do on occasion, if there's a special request, somebody says, hey, my relative, myself, whatever, I just moved here. I need to get to work. I need to get to a bus stop. I need to, whatever the case may be. Those are considered in one-on-one cases, and we have gone out and done ramps for those individuals if that's brought to our attention. So kind of in a nutshell, that's how we've been doing it and how it's currently going on. If somebody has a specific area of interest or has a question or something like that, I'd be more than happy to address that.
Questions?
Sure, I'll jump in. I've just got a couple, and I really appreciate your explanation of how a situation such as what occurred on Ames Street this last, like how that process goes, because I think there was a lot of confusion around why sidewalks would ever be put in without ramps. And so hearing from you on like what your typical process is and what this circumstance was because of additional capacity, I think is helpful. Is there anywhere that you can share, or just in general that you can share, kind of what's been identified as the city's priorities for the next year or 2 years in terms of those things that you're chipping away at or working towards that compliance plan?
I have a mill and overlay spreadsheet that we do we've always got one in the works that we're either finishing out or developing the next one. I don't have that in front of me, but I do have that. I could send that to somebody so you could see the corridors that we've got lined up for the next couple of years. And then again, that's how those get addressed. As far as neighborhoods go, those just tend to be one of two ways. If we get complaints, obviously we go out and investigate those complaints, and or if it's within a neighborhood, it doesn't always correspond with a street project. My neighborhood, for example, probably 4 or 5 years ago, the city came out, had nothing to do with me. They just came out, worked their way down the street. They identified all the panels that needed to be fixed by the homeowners, which I had several, and offered, I don't know if you know that process or not. I'll go through it for those of you that may not. When the city comes out and identifies a sidewalk that is deficient, they'll write it up. They'll say, you have X number of panels that need to be fixed. Under the city contract, it would cost this many dollars. If you want us to go ahead and do that, that's fine. You'll be assessed after we're done. If you want to do it yourself, that's fine as well. You have this much time to do it. So that happened down my street. And then when the city came and did all that, that's when they upgraded all of the corners to the current standards, things like that. But as far as a list of the sidewalk contracts, that kind of goes along with the road, the upcoming road corridors that we're doing. And I've got both of those lists that I can email someone if you want to see what those look like.
I have a question. Not being from Omaha, does the city require all properties to have a sidewalk, or is it one side only?
It's neither. If you are building something new, you are required to build sidewalks on both sides. There are cases, and you may have recently seen the Crossroads development present one of these cases, where they come in and say, this particular developer said along this one street, for the vast majority of that project, they're building sidewalks, mostly wide sidewalks along both sides of the street. But there is a street on the west side of the development. They said there is future development coming. There's going to be really no connections, nowhere for anybody to go. So we want to build the sidewalk on the east side of the sidewalk now. and we will build the one on the west side when that development happens down the road. They come to the city planning and public works department, and we can either fight them on that and say, nope, you got to come in. We're gonna stand up and dig our heels in and fight. You got to build them both right now, even if it means tearing one out later. Or we can give what we kind of call a soft no to the city council and say, hey, we agree with this. We agree that when this gets built 4 or 5 years down the road, that's the better time to put in the sidewalks. Until if you do it now, you're going to have a lot of waste. You're going to have a lot of money spent that ultimately goes to nothing. But ultimately, the city council can approve or deny that. In this case, they approved it, and we agreed that that was the best way to go. But another way to answer your question is, if you live in a neighborhood, and there's lots of them in Omaha, that we're done with what we call substandard streets, and there are no sidewalks in that neighborhood, the city does not have the power to come in and require those neighbors to retrofit their streets with sidewalks. We have a vehicle to do it if they choose to, and a few have. It's called a sidewalk improvement district. They come in as a neighborhood and they say, we want sidewalks, and the city will work with them to help with the designs. We'll work with them to get a bid along with some of our big projects to try to get them an economy of scale bid. But ultimately, it is up to the neighbors to pay for those sidewalks. Just like the sidewalk in front of my house was paid for at some point when that SID developer did that neighborhood. He built sidewalks, streets, curb and gutters, all of those things. And every lot was whatever it was, $30,000, which paid for all of that. So that $30,000 lot ultimately got built into the mortgage holder of that first home. And so we have a lot of places in Omaha that don't have sidewalks, but for 20 plus years now, when somebody comes in and does a new development, or they tear down an old one and put in something new, they are required to put those sidewalks in.
Okay, I have two related questions that came through the chat to me. One is, what is the best method to bring forward an issue, a problem? Is there a best point of contact? And from another questioner, and what's the timeline to get those addressed?
The best point of contact is Austin Rouser. He is our construction engineer. The sidewalk improvements are handled through our construction division. His number is 402-444-4930. So you can call the construction division, or you can call the mayor's hotline, either way. As far as a time frame goes, usually it depends on what the conclusion is on the request. Everybody that asks, I'll give you an example. I mean, if there's a great big long area, I just got a call from somebody today that said somebody wants to talk about building sidewalks at 204th and Pacific. And I can tell you the answer to that question is, we have an unimproved old county road section out there, which means there's no curb and gutter, there's no storm sewers, none of that stuff exists. You can't meet ADA requirements and go out and build sidewalks when the road is draining into ditches. You can't get the sidewalk flat enough and still move the water safely to the ditch. So that will be addressed when the city goes out and widens Pacific Street to its ultimate section, puts in the curb and gutter, grades the entire right of way, and puts that in. So the time frame is really up in the air. If it's somebody that calls and says, you know, I need to get from here to here, you need to do these ramps, we can probably slide that in a construction season. If it's somebody calling about Pacific Street out west, that may have to wait until we do a capital improvement project in that area.
And Kat put Austin's contact information in the chat, so
great.
That will be available to the group.
Hey Todd, with the contractors that get hired to do some of the work through the city, I think one of the questions that had come up in some of our conversations was, is there a standard language in those RFPs that ensures that any contractor that's fulfilling work on behalf of the city is meeting those federal expectations for ADA accessibility, so that there's no gray area on what they're supposed to, what the outcomes of their work supposed to be?
Yes, there is. And we have inspectors that are out there making sure that happens too. ADA is a very, very complicated issue. And we have, I don't want to get too far off the beaten path here, but we've sat down with our planning department at length, because what can happen now and has in the past, I think we've got the loophole closed now, is we'll have a developer that'll come in and plan a whole subdivision, and they sell the walkout lots on the downhill side of the street, cost more and tend to sell faster. Everybody likes walkout lots. So the neighborhood is primarily built out, and somebody says, gee, we really, really wanted to live here. If we could have had a walkout lot, we would have, but we're going to go somewhere else. And the contractor says, well, you know, we can make this lot on the other side a walkout lot. So what they do is they raise the floor of the house. And in order to do that, the garage floor tends to raise too, which means they need to make the garage, they need to make the driveway steeper. Oftentimes it makes it virtually impossible to achieve a desirable ADA cross slope on that sidewalk. And Omaha is kind of a hilly city. You can't always tie it back in at the corner. So it creates a situation that is, I don't like the word impossible as an engineer, but it is very, very challenging to deal with. And if you want to visualize what this could look like, either get on Google Maps or drive down 84th Street between Pacific and Dodge. You'll notice that on the west side of that road, we wanted to put in, you know, sidewalks on both sides and a wide trail. On the west side of that road, those driveways are very, very steep. So if you can imagine a straight line between somebody's garage floor and the edge of our road, that line has a maximum grade. Well, if you put a sidewalk across it, that sidewalk has to be flat or almost flat. So that oftentimes makes you have to exceed the maximum grade for that driveway then between where the back of the sidewalk is, and be able to tie that up into a garage. And you can't move the house and you can't move the road. So there's an example where we ended up just doing a sidewalk on one side of the street. We could not physically achieve the flat portion that we needed to for that sidewalk and still get those driveways to meet minimum grade. So it's not always, I don't know if this is the word, I don't know if it's not always retrofittable. I don't know if that's a really word or not, but it's very difficult at times. If somebody's telling you this can only be so steep and this has to be flat, sometimes you just run out of room.
That makes sense. And then my last question, get you off the hot seat from me. I just wanted to, I had mentioned the mode shift report at the beginning of the meeting. I think you were in there at that point, but has the city been provided with a copy report that they can use in some of the plannings around the corridor improvements, or is that something that would be beneficial to be able to get in your guys' hands? And
you broke up just a little bit as you were asking a question. Are you asking if I've seen the report?
Yes, I was just asking if the report had been provided to the department so that you guys have it as a resource in your planning.
I have read the report. Yes, I have a copy of it on my desk.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to check with on Todd, I really appreciate you being so forthright and it's really helpful. We ran into a situation a couple months back as a group where a citizen reported that there had been improvements made, but apparently it was a subcontracted piece, and it was done in reverse, where the sidewalks were put in and then the ADA stuff was intended to be done afterwards, but it wasn't done. And when asked, this individual reportedly said that they were told, well, we'll get to it in several months. And the person who was asking needed accessibility in the interim. Can you kind of guide us on how one would handle an issue of that magnitude? Because it was, pretty concerning.
Well, and I don't know the details of what you're asking as far as the time of year. Sometimes if it was in the late fall, sometimes we run out of temperature where we can pour concrete. So
it was in the late fall.
It was, or it was not?
It was.
Okay, so that, and I don't know the case that you're talking about, that could be the reason. We hit a point. I mean, if the temperature You guys know this in Nebraska, we can have 50-degree temperatures in December and the next week it can be 0. Once the temperature drops below a certain point, we can't pour concrete anymore. We just have to stop no matter what. And sometimes that's very inconvenient. But if that was not the case, and it may not have been, it may have been that a contractor was wrapping up work in that area at a certain time. They were trying to finish another area. There's all kinds of variables. We're not perfect. So in an area like that, I would recommend, and I'll give you an example. Somebody sent me a note last year and said, I am handicapped, or my son is handicapped. They pick him up in a van. There have been construction barricades out in front of our house for weeks now. And the van can't maneuver because of the way the barricades are. It's a bus, it's a big truck, and it can't get to in front of our driveway, and it's impacting our way of life. So I went out, I wrote down the address, I went and got my truck, and I drove out there. It was not a city project, it was an MUD project. But nonetheless, I made a call to the MUD project manager and said, we have a specific circumstance here. And I drove through your barricades. I understand why they're there. However, we need to readjust the barricading plan. We need to allow this size vehicle to get to this address because somebody is impacted. And they were happy to do it. They fixed it like a day or two later. They just, like with everything else in life, it was set up for the average car. It was a neighborhood street. So it was set up so cars could get through and get to their driveway, but they didn't realize that in this case, you need to get a larger vehicle through there. And once they knew that, they accommodated it. So in a situation you're describing, if that happened when the weather wasn't going to 0, I would say you would call our construction division or call myself, tell us the situation and let us investigate it. Because, sometimes when you're dealing with 4 or 5 different contractors and a huge volume of work, we leave it to their discretion. Hey, you guys need to finish certain areas and they have to prioritize. Sometimes they know they're not going to get all of this done before fall. So they pick the areas that are maybe most important. And sometimes that may not correspond with a certain person's need. And you just need to bring that to our attention.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's very helpful. Well, I'm assuming that Austin would be a resource there as well.
Yeah,
Correct.
Austin is our manager of this program and the contractors. He puts out the contracts every year for this effort. And works with them directly, but I talk to Austin every day. So we're a team.
Well, how's Austin doing today then?
Austin is doing fairly well. We have experienced the loss here in Public Works. We lost one of our engineers late yesterday to COVID. And so it's a little bit of a sad day around Public Works. This gentleman's worked here for almost 20 years and we're kind of a big family around here, and it's a sad time.
Sorry to hear. Believe me, within the disability community in Omaha, it's been a tough sledding as well. So
yeah,
we know of what you speak. Absolutely. Sorry to hear.
Thank you.
Other questions for Todd?
I do. One of the things that, and I don't know if you're the person to ask, and we were told everything was on the table, so here we go. One of the reasons that we really wanted to talk to you was when we had excessive snow this year. There were a lot of places where individuals that would use a wheelchair could not get to their buses because the snow was plowed in their driveway or plowed at the end of the corner. And I realized that there was a lot of snow this year. If that happens though, where can we direct people to call to say, I know you guys are swamped, but is there any way you can help me get out because I can't?
Not really. That is something that, the old market is a good example. We took special equipment down there and cleared out corners. We did the same thing for some of the vendors at Midtown. When it's plowed into piles that are 10 or 12 feet high and there's literally tons of snow, we will take our heavy equipment out. But that snow came off of the street, and we always laugh in those areas when we make a small pile and we come back the next day, it's now a big pile because people learn that they put it there. But as far as individuals with driveways, with sidewalks, with things like that, we just don't have the availability to come out and help. you know, this was a massive, massive topic for about a week after that 13-inch snowfall on that Monday in December. I don't remember the day. We had our own police force put a whole bunch of snow out on the street, and one of their captains, who's a very good friend of mine, called and said, well, I don't know what you expected us to do with it. And I said, I can tell you what I didn't expect you to do with it, and that's shove it all out into the street. You can't do that. That's illegal. And so they, you know, they hired somebody to come and pick it up, and they just didn't know. But that was the most frequently asked question of me in the days following that storm is, what do you expect us to do with all this snow? And, you know, I like to reference my personal property because it's a good example of what happens in the city. Our contractors by contract have to plow to within a foot or so of the curb. There's some leeway there because if you hold them to one super strict standard, it can cause other issues. But generally, they're supposed to get within a foot of the curb. There was a spot out in my cul-de-sac that I measured it I was just curious. It was 8 feet from the curb after all these subsequent snowstorms came in. And we discussed this with the mayor at length, myself, the public works director, because the week of that storm, I had neighbors that were actually mad at me. You guys need to clear these streets better. You need to come back. And we talked to the mayor. We said, we've got warm weather coming. Friday was 36 degrees of that week. We had salt down. We have warm weather coming. We said, we can take our great big tandem axle trucks out there and we can scrape these streets to the curb. We have the power to do that. But all of that snow is going to end up again at the base of somebody's driveway or again on somebody's sidewalk. And then instead of people saying, hey, my road's a little narrower than it should be, I'm not very happy, you go out and fix all that. And now you got 10 people saying, thanks a lot. I spent this many hours clearing my sidewalk in the end of my driveway, and you jerks came out 4 days later and put it all back there again. And now it's all packed ice and frozen together, and the average person cannot get out there with a shovel and get it clean. And then we really make enemies. So unfortunately, when we get that much snow, everybody has to give a little bit. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but the short answer is we do not have staff. That storm hit Monday. It was Saturday at 2:00 in the afternoon that we declared our efforts complete. And that was just to get the streets cleared.
Thank you for your honest answer. That will help us in the future moving forward when we get people talking to us about complaints. Your answer does not surprise me, but I appreciate you saying that publicly.
You're welcome. I will say this, since this came up, this is a great time to bring this up, and I hadn't thought of it. We are working with the Parks Department, we being Public Works. We have most of the sidewalks in the city, the vast majority are cleared by the homeowners, but there are some, I'll use the ones out along 132nd and Pacific, because that just pops to mind, where they're along the street, but they are along Parks property, or they're what we call double fronted sidewalks. So the homeowner clears the sidewalk in front of their house, but behind their house is a sidewalk along Pacific Street. The city does those. Public Works does some of them. Parks does the majority, but not all. We have been working with our Parks Department to have them take over 100% of the sidewalk effort so that we, Public Works, can do the streets, Parks can do the sidewalk. And the way we're looking at that is that Public Works is going to buy a significant amount of equipment because we have some money we can spend, and Parks is going to hire some additional people so that the overall goal, because we had some folks that were very upset this year, and I completely get it. I mean, it's 4 days after a storm. Now, in the case of the big storm, as you guys probably already know, you have 24 hours after the end of the street clearing operation to clear your sidewalks. Unfortunately, there are some people that take that to heart. And they say, well, the city hasn't declared an end to their operation yet, so I don't have to worry about my sidewalks. Well, then you have pedestrians walking in foot deep snow all over town. So we are working with our Parks Department to improve that performance next year.
Great, thank you.
May not be perfect, but it'll be better.
I do want to comment that Eric, as we can't hear him, also appreciated your response.
Oh, thank you.
I guess I'm acting as Eric's voice today. So,
thank you, Mark.
other questions for Todd?
I do appreciate your questions for what it's worth, because I didn't have a long speech or PowerPoint prepared. So I thought I'd lay the groundwork and then we can just talk. So thank you for your questions. I do appreciate that.
Well, I for one very much appreciate your answers. We have a lot of people that we work with disabilities and mobility issues. And for me, not being from Omaha, having some of these answers now, I'm better able to support our consumers with the answers that they need, and not just an, I don't know, or, I don't know where to go. So the conversation to me has been very valuable.
Well, thank you. I'm glad. I'm not always popular, but I am always honest. So,
Probably words to live by there, Todd. I don't know.
I don't know. The week after that big storm was a long week.
I think it was for the whole city.
Yeah.
My back and snow blower, and I'm not sure which order got. That was a pretty long week. Both got a good workout. Oh.
Well, I will say for me, after that snowstorm, I live in an apartment, so I didn't have issues, but I was impressed with how quickly the major roads in Omaha were clear to drive on. I drive major snow routes. I understand that. Frankly, I was really impressed with how quickly those roads were clear, and I wasn't slipping and sliding and praying to get to work.
Yeah, thank you. We were very pleased. Actually, we got a lot of help from the weather. I know that sounds funny after a 13-inch snowfall, but when it stopped snowing, we didn't get a ton of wind. We didn't get any more snow, and we had fairly warm temperatures. So as we worked our way through those roads and applied salt treatment, the salt really helped us out. And so within a couple of days, the city you could get around fairly well. And we were thankful for the help that Mother Nature gave us on that one.
And maybe 4-wheel drive,
Yeah, that didn't hurt.
having a vehicle with that, I can tell you that it was like that added to it. Anything else for Todd, guys? Are we cool?
We're cool.
All right.
If you think of anything else, team, I so appreciate what you're doing for our city as well. So if you think of anything else, you've got my contact information as well as Austin's. Send us an email or give me a call, or any way we can help, let me know, please. Thank you.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you, Todd.
You're welcome. You want me to go ahead and log off then, or?
Yeah, we're just going to finish up with some report outs, and
okay,
we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I do need to correct the phone number I gave you earlier. It's 444, not 440. So
actually, we're going to go around, and I was going
Okay.
to ask folks if they had announcements. So do you want to start that, Laura? Or
I don't necessarily have any announcements other than I gave you a wrong phone number. I apologize. The number for the Douglas County Health Department is 402-444-3400.
and that's for particularly if anyone needs to call in if they're homebound and need to get on the list to get somebody.
Or even if they want to get on the list to be called when the shot's available.
Very good. That's pretty good announcement, I'd say. So
I would encourage everybody to get your shot. I've had mine. I survived, and I don't have horns yet. So there we
I
go.
had mine, and it's called the weightlifting off one's shoulders. When my son got his, that was really huge. How about if I go around and just call on folks? If you have an announcement, great. If not, just no problem. Nancy?
No, I don't.
Okay. Boy, when I do that, then everything jumps all over the place. Meaghan?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Jennifer?
I think the only thing I'd like to add is we're working really hard on recovery and returning to learn and planning for next year, and our students continuing to come back, and we're seeing a lot of success with that. So we're happy to have kids in our classrooms, and teachers are getting their vaccines and doing well. So we're recovering and thriving. That's our goal.
And making a lot of parents happy, I think.
Hope so.
Personally. But and Eric said he didn't have any announcements. Lisa?
I just wanted to say, I don't have any announcements other than get your vaccine. I got COVID, my whole family got COVID. We got it really bad and was in the hospital for a long time. Over 80 blood clots in my lungs. I'm telling you, the vaccine shot 1 and 2, it was nothing like having COVID. So please, please go get your shot.
Thank you for that, Lisa. That word, more words to live by. What can I say? Stephanie?
Nothing from me.
Okay, thank you. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. The one thing I wanted to mention, the Monroe Meyer Institute is physically in the middle of a move. If you're familiar with Monroe Meyer, we've been on the UNMC campus, pretty much on the corner of 44th and Dewey for, since 1959. In that way, I don't have to do the math. You can do the math. We're moving to 69th and Pine Street. We purchased, the University of Nebraska Medical Center purchased one of the first data buildings, first data, and we will be in the south building, which is the building that faces onto Pine. We have had space problems here for years, and we now no longer have space problems. All of our staff, faculty, and folks and volunteers are all in one place, or will be in one place when the move is finished. And the move will be finished probably the middle of April. We'll all be in the same building for the first time in probably 15 years. And I invite folks as opportunity to present to kind of stop by and at least drive by and see it. I don't think they'll be doing tours quite yet because being in the middle of a move, it's just not a, I don't think that's part of the deal. Let's see. I want to thank our sign interpreter, Jamie. And I don't think I have to thank Cox Communications for taping us because I don't think they did, since we're completely virtual this time, but they're usually awesome to work with. And that, again, I mentioned earlier that this is available on the mayor's website. If you go to the mayor's office, click on Disabilities Commission, there'll be an archived copy of this presentation by Todd, which I thought was really, really helpful. Let's see, and if I'm right, I think it'll be available on the city's YouTube channel, and then also if everything works out, it'll be on Cox channel 22. But again, given we're all virtual, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to pull that off. It will be on YouTube tomorrow, I am told. So thank you for that, Ms. Baker Coleman. I also want to remind you that our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for April 26th. We'll be having a representative from the Chamber of Commerce to come in and talk about some disability issues as it relates to the chamber. And at this point, although we technically don't adjourn, since we didn't have a quorum, I think we're finished. Any other comments real quick, guys?
Great meeting.
Okay, thank you all for your participation. I thought that went very well. So thanks again. You can go ahead and stop recording now.